Hello everybody, and thank you very much for joining me again on my channel, where I am discussing the various issues regarding the new Kadampa tradition. And in this video, I would like to just mention three things that I think are very problematic in the NKT that make the NKT a hypocritical organization. So one of my big problems with the NKT is that is their hypocrisy, is the fact that what they preach and the way they sell themselves, their marketing, their sales pitch is not aligned with their practice, and it's not aligned with the Buddhist practice either. So there are basically just three things that I would like to talk about here. The first is everybody welcome. The second is refuge, taking refuge in the Sangha. And the third is love is the nuclear bomb that destroys our enemies. And so what my point here in this video is going to be that none of these three basic tenets of the NKT is practiced by the NKT. And so what I'm talking about here is a systemic thing. It does not mean that none of the members in the NKT practice these things, okay? I don't want, because this is typically what happens when I make these videos or make these statements, then people, come in and say, no, that's not true, because there are lots of nice people in the NKT, and, I'm not like that, and that's not my experience. So the issue here is not so much what the individual person practices in the NKT, but rather what the NKT as an organization stands for, what the NKT as an organization represents, and the way it manages its organization, its own self. So what I'm trying to talk about here is the systemic problem, not the individual problem. And it's not down to just a few bad apples. These are issues of policy and practice that goes back, decades, ever since the NKT was created. So let's see the first, hypocrisy, which is everybody welcome. So this is a slogan that we see a lot on NKT marketing material or content on social media. They just love this expression, everybody welcome, but it's not actually true. Not everybody is welcome in the NKT. By and large, you have to pay for the teachings. So if you cannot pay for the teachings, you are not welcome. You cannot attend. A few years ago, I conducted a small experiment, and under alias, I wrote to a number of NKT centers in the UK and in some other parts of the world. And I explained in my email that I was very much interested in the Dharma, and I would love to study the Dharma, but unfortunately, I was in a life situation where I wasn't able to pay for the teachings, that I could not afford to go to the classes. I explained that I was unemployed, that I was in a life situation that was particularly difficult for me, but I also said that I can volunteer, and I am happy to work in exchange of teachings and maybe participating in events. Many of these centers never responded to my email. I think I only got two responses, and both of them rejected me. I sent out about 10 emails, 10 different centers, and I got 2 responses, and that's 20%, right? So 80% of the centers didn't respond. And then both centers rejected me, those who responded. Now, I'm not going to name centers here, but I do have the documentation, I do have the original emails, and I don't want to shame anyone, honestly. So I'm not, if you are interested, let me know, and I'm going to send you the screenshots. But they rejected me, and then one center said, well, we don't give free classes, we don't do that. And then I said, well, I could, I kind of insisted a little bit with that center, and I said, I could really volunteer for, many hours a week, and but they just said, no, we don't. And and I said, but I could just maybe get a discount then, not for free, but I could volunteer in exchange of a discount. And they said, well, we don't do discounts. We don't do discounts. So that was, I was already disenchanted from the NKT. This was not too long ago, maybe 2 years ago. I even posted about it in the exposing group at the time. But I was still, it still made me feel bad, you know. It still made me feel like that kind of rejection, like we don't do discounts, like no matter what you do, like you can't come. So that's my personal private experience, you know. Maybe other people have different experiences, but by and large, the situation is that you need to pay. You need to pay for the teachings, you need to pay for the events, you cannot participate for free. So that means not everybody welcome. Also, if you are paying, but let's say you are asking too many uncomfortable questions, or you are creating problems in the Sangha, they just love this expression, creating problems, you're not welcome then either. Then you're going to be marginalized or eliminated or banned from the center if you actually complain. Many of the members in the exposing groups have been actually banned from all the centers around the world, globally, all the NKT centers around the world, because they raised serious issues that they felt there were serious issues with the NKT. So those people are not welcome either. So everybody welcome is, with caveat. So not everybody is welcome. The second thing is, love is the nuclear bomb that destroys our enemies, said Kelsey Gyatso some time back, about 15, 20 years ago, in some public teaching in Canada, if I remember correctly. So love is the nuclear bomb that destroys our enemies. So I do have a little bit of a problem with the premise of this statement, the fact that, you know, we have enemies. Like, I personally don't have enemies. I don't feel like I have enemies. I have people that I might avoid, or people that I don't want to be connected to or in touch with, but I wouldn't call them my enemies. But then again, that doesn't mean that other people cannot have enemies. But who is your enemy? Like, why should one have an enemy? Okay, so who would be my enemy? Like, if somebody really hurt me, if somebody killed my dogs, for example, or if somebody destroyed my property, or if somebody hurt my children, they might become my enemy. Those would be my enemies. So they would have to do something very, very, very serious to become my enemies. Otherwise, I just, like, you know, don't care. You don't like me, you insult me, whatever, you don't respect me, you don't respect my boundaries. Okay, I'm just going to eliminate you from my life. I'm not going to consider you my enemy. So the people who really hurt me, who destroy my property or hurt my children or the people that I love, or my dogs, or, you know, want to hurt me, kill me in a very serious way, well, yeah, they could become my enemy. But then would I want to destroy them by showing love? And would my showing love to them destroy them? Okay, no, absolutely not. I would not want to give these people love. And even if I did want to give them love, and even if I did give them love, I don't think they would be destroyed by that. I'm sorry. So the question is, does the NKT have enemies? Well, yeah. Yes, it does. I mean, we remember the demos, right, against the Dalai Lama. That went on for more than a decade. The Dalai Lama was stalked around the globe and demonstrated against all over the world. And the students of the Dalai Lama, the people who went to the different venues to listen to the Dalai Lama teaching, couldn't listen to the Dalai Lama teaching because of the constant shouting and angry screaming of the NKT monks and lay people who were there with the drums and the various instruments to demonstrate against the Dalai Lama. And then there were also horrible online images where the Dalai Lama was portrayed as the devil or Hitler. And there were also images of people close to the Dalai Lama, like Robert Thurman, was portrayed as a horrible devil, right? So was that love? I don't think that was love. I don't think the NKT was showing love towards its enemies at that time. Okay, what other enemies does the NKT have? Well, when I was involved with the NKT, I was told that the people who have left the NKT are the enemies, and especially the people who are then, who then become activists, like myself or many other people in our group. And so they are considered enemies. I was told that those people are the enemies of the NKT. Are these people shown love? I don't think so. I don't think the NKT shows love to these people. Many of these people, like Carol McGuire or Linda Ciardiello or Michelle Haslam and many, many other people that I'm not naming now, were harassed, threatened, stalked for months, for years by the NKT, both online and in real life. And you can find material as regards, if you do a search in the Exposing the New Kadampa group on Facebook. Michelle Haslam, for example, lost her job because an NKT member, allegedly an NKT member, under an alias and under a fake profile, sent letters to her employers. And so she lost her job because of that slander and harassment. I myself have had experiences that I'm not going to go into here, but there has been very negative consequences of my activism. So I haven't seen evidence of the NKT showing love to its enemies and trying to destroy its enemies with love. And so when they say these things and they keep talking about love, 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 it's just false. It's fake, and it's a hypocrisy. And finally, the third hypocrisy that I consider pretty serious in the NKT is this idea of taking refuge in the Sangha. So this is like a Buddhist thing, right? Of taking refuge in the Dharma, Buddha, and Sangha. And so it's very much emphasized in the NKT. So, okay, there is the Dharma, there is the Buddha, who is Kelsang Gyatso, obviously, living Buddha. And even though he's dead now, but he's still considered the living Buddha. And, the Sangha. And so when the Sangha is basically the group of people, as it is understood in the NKT, it's the group of people, and in the NKT, the group of practitioners. So there's a wider Sangha around the world, but then there is your center that, you go to and you support and you volunteer for and you pay for and you donate to. And so that is going to be the Sangha where you're going to take refuge. But the question is it really refuge? Well, I already mentioned before that you're only welcome if you can pay and if you don't cause problems. And as soon as you do cause problems, you are no longer welcome. So how can you take refuge in a community that has very serious conditions for you to be part of it, right? Like, one condition is that you have to pay, and the other condition is that you have to toe the line. You have to, it is normal to have to follow certain rules in a group of people, correct? Otherwise, we could not live together, okay? But it's also pretty normal to have a certain level of freedom and democracy and harmony in the group, right? And the freedom to voice one's concerns with the idea that we want to make the group work better and we want to make things better for the members. So also this idea that we make decisions together, right? That's part of the Sangha. And as far as I understand it, and as far as the various testimonies indicate, that's not what happens in a typical center or in a typical Sangha. So there are people who make the decisions, and there are people who follow the directives or the orders of these people. And if they don't, the consequences are devastating for the individual. So I'm going to bring up my friend, but I could bring up many other examples. But my friend Anita, who was part of the Melbourne Sangha, and she had been in that Sangha for 15 years. But then she had concerns, she had concerns about the Dalai Lama demonstration. She had concerns about the management of the center, which she wanted to discuss with the management of the center and resident teacher, who was Kalsam Dorning at that time. And they wouldn't discuss anything with her. And she was immediately removed from her sort of position that she had in the Sangha and marginalized. And she was also going through a difficult period at that time in her life, like a divorce and a move. And there was this period of time that she didn't have a place to stay. And so she asked the group, the center, if she could spend a few nights in the center. And they said no, even though she had no place to go to. And she was trying to talk to her resident teacher, who was, again, repeat, Kalsam Dorning at that time. And they wouldn't let her speak to him, and he wouldn't speak to her, right? Repeat, this is a woman who had been involved in that group for 15 years. And, eventually she committed suicide. And, I'm not blaming the NKT directly for her suicide. Obviously, a suicide is a very, very complex thing, and then there are many reasons why a person might decide to end their life. But that's what happened. That's what happened. And so, but I know many other examples as well, where people were simply kicked aside, kicked out, banished from the center when they spoke up, when they complained, when they voiced concerns, or in any other way the management deemed that they were not whatever, useful or important for the center. When I left the NKT, it's true that it was my decision to just leave. But as soon as I left, all of my NKT friends that I was friends with on social media blocked me, unfriended and blocked. And it was, actually a pretty traumatic experience to notice that all of these people that I've been in contact with and in touch with for 2 years on social media just simply blocked me, simply because I decided to leave. So if a Sangha member decides to leave a particular Sangha, should that Sangha then, block them and completely eliminate them? And then we also have evidence that when somebody leaves on their own accord, their person is going to be, it's going to be destroyed. It's never going to be like, oh, well, they left because they just wanted to leave. It's always going to be like, oh, she didn't have the karma, or she didn't have the faith, or she this, or she that. I actually was told once by my spiritual friend at that time in the NKT that there was this woman who, we saw this woman on the street, and he said, well, she used to be part of our group, part of our Sangha in Rome, but then she left, and then after she left, she got this terrible acne on her face. And I was like, yeah, like, so? I just didn't understand, what that had to do with anything. And, he made me understand that she got the acne because she left the Sangha, she left the NKT. And I was like, it's like, no, don't say that. That's superstition. That's crazy. So taking refuge in the Sangha, in the NKT is difficult. You can't really take refuge. It's a conditioned situation. There are many conditions. And these are conditions that are not particularly good for one's mental health. I mean, for some people, it might be okay, they don't care because they don't go so often and they're not so involved, but other people, remember the onion, my previous video about the NKT onion, if you are very involved, if you are closer to the center, then it becomes a very difficult thing. And so it's another hypocrisy in the NKT that should be taken with a pinch of salt. So anyway, that's it for today. Thank you very much for your attention and continued support. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you next time.